This picture shocks the entire internet. Just look at what this dog found. Annie was on her way home from work when something unexpected caught her eye. A dog standing over a street drain, staring into it with an expression of deep sorrow. Curious, she glanced into the grate, and what she saw left her stunned. Earlier that day, Annie had walked past a store when the dog first drew her attention. It was a striking German shepherd with a sleek black coat, beautiful and proud. But what truly caught her was the look on its face. It wasn't the usual friendly curiosity dogs have toward strangers. Instead, the animal looked at her with mournful eyes, full of longing, standing perfectly still above the metal drain cover. Though her heart ached for the dog, Annie kept walking. She told herself its owner was probably just inside the shop. After a long day, all she wanted was to get home and rest. Surely the dog would be fine. But the next day, as she retraced her steps, the sight stopped her in her tracks. The same dog, the same drain, the same look in its eyes. Annie had intended to grab groceries from the store. As she neared the entrance, she saw the German shepherd watching her carefully. His whole body tensed, as if unsure whether she was a threat. She stepped inside, but not before glancing back through the glass. There he was again, gazing down into the drain, as though hoping for something or someone. At first, she figured he must be hungry, lingering outside the shop for scraps or kindness from a stranger. But then she looked closer. There was no collar, no signs of grooming or care. His posture was stiff from a night likely spent curled on cold pavement. A pang of guilt struck Annie's chest. This dog wasn't just waiting for food. He was alone. As she walked the aisles, her thoughts stayed with the animal outside. Alongside her groceries, she picked up a bag of treats, dried meat, the good kind. She didn't know when he'd eat again, so she bought plenty. Outside, she approached slowly and laid the treats on the ground, gently encouraging the dog to eat. He didn't move, just watched her, silent, guarded. Sensing his fear, she stepped back. Finally, the dog crept forward, but what he did next stopped her cold. He didn't eat the treats. One by one, he picked them up gently in his mouth and carried them over to the drain. With delicate precision, he dropped each piece through the metal grates, letting them vanish into the darkness below. Annie stood frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. Why would a starving dog give away food? Suddenly, it clicked. He wasn't waiting for food from strangers. He was protecting something in the drain, something he cared about more than himself. She took a cautious step forward, hoping to peer into the opening. But before she got too close, the dog sprang to his feet and barked. A deep, threatening sound that made her stop instantly. Every muscle in his body was tense. His eyes locked onto hers. The message couldn't have been clearer. Stay back. And in that moment, fear gripped Annie like never before. The dog wasn't just protective. He was ready to fight. It was a strange contrast to the little girl she once was, who had longed so badly for a puppy of her own. As a child, Annie had begged her single mother endlessly, dreaming of a loyal friend to grow up with. But love wasn't always enough. Her mother, stretched thin and barely making ends meet, couldn't afford to care for a pet. Eventually, Annie stopped asking. Life moved on. Years later, that same life would demand more from her than she'd ever expected. When her mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer, Annie became the caretaker. The roles had reversed. She did everything to ensure her mother's final days were peaceful, even as her own world crumbled around her. Stress consumed her. She dropped weight rapidly. Every cent went to medical bills. And then, finally, her mother was gone. Annie had been by her side, holding her hand, when she took her final breath. Afterward, she returned home, consumed by grief and numb with loneliness. But something was waiting for her. There, sitting quietly at her front door, was a dog. Another stray, filthy, weary, defeated. Its matted fur hung in clumps, ears drooped, and sad, pleading eyes met hers. It didn't bark, didn't move, just waited. Forgive the pause, but before we continue this unbelievable story, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to you. Thank you. Annie wasn't ready for a dog. She didn't have the strength, the knowledge, or the heart for it. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to turn it away. Still mourning, she stepped inside, leaving the dog outside in the dark. That night, sleep was impossible. Her mind spun with memories of her mother, and with the sound of soft barking outside her door. Eventually, she had to look. Quietly, she rose from bed and went to the front of the house. The dog was still there, waiting. When she opened the door, Annie froze. The dog was still there, barking softly, soaked from the rain. His coat was drenched, and he shivered in the cold, a runny nose giving away how long he'd been out there. Annie had completely forgotten about him, assuming he had wandered off, but he hadn't. He had waited. The sight of him like that shattered her. Guilt twisted in her chest. Without hesitation, she brought him inside. The moment the door closed, the dog trotted straight to the fireplace as if he belonged there. Annie gently covered him with a blanket and sat beside him, watching the fire flicker in silence. They stayed like that for hours. No words, no movement, just warmth. Two souls, wrapped in sorrow, grieving together. By morning, there was no question in her heart. She wasn't going to send him away. He was part of her life now. She gave him a name, Comfort, because that's exactly what he had become. Comfort stayed with her through everything, even as she buried her mother. He walked by her side, a quiet sentinel through every tear, every painful goodbye. Together, Annie and Comfort weathered the storm of loss, and in time they began to heal. The years passed. Life slowly settled back into place. Annie laughed again. She smiled more often, and always Comfort was there, her anchor, until one day, everything unraveled again. It happened so suddenly, she couldn't make sense of it. She came home from work, expecting to find Comfort waiting inside, tail wagging as always, but instead, he was outside, free, excited, eyes gleaming with joy. Confused, she looked toward the gate. It was open. She never left it open. As she stepped forward, Comfort saw her and barked, thrilled to see her. He bounded toward her, tail whipping the air behind him. Annie smiled, her heart light, but then it happened. He bolted into the road, too eager to wait for her. Neither of them saw the car until it was too late. Time slowed, the screech of tires, the blur of headlights, the sound of impact, then stillness. Comfort's body lay in the road, eyes open, motionless. Annie's scream pierced the silence. She ran to him, dropping to her knees, pulling his body into her arms. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she rocked him, pleading for him to wake up. But he was gone, just like that. For weeks, Annie was numb. The pain was unbearable. Another unbearable goodbye. Losing Comfort felt like losing her mother all over again. And the worst part? She blamed herself. If she had just locked the gate, if she had checked it, he'd still be alive. Eventually, she forced herself to pull together. She knew neither her mother nor Comfort would want to see her spiral. She had to keep going. She went back to work, but nothing felt right. She tried to adopt another dog, hoping it would fill the whole Comfort left behind. But every time she walked into a shelter, she'd break down in tears and leave empty-handed. No dog could ever replace him. That's when she made a silent vow. She would never own another dog again. And so, she stayed away from dogs, from attachments, from anything that might make her feel that kind of loss again. But now, standing there on that same street, staring at the black German shepherd standing watch over the drain, she felt a familiar tug. At first, she'd assumed he was just hungry, but watching him drop every single treat down into the darkness told her otherwise. He was guarding something. She had to know what. She tried looking into the drain, but the angle made it impossible. Whatever was down there remained hidden, so Annie came up with a plan. As she left, she gave the dog a small wave. He didn't follow. He simply turned his head back to the drain, gaze unwavering. But what the dog didn't know was that Annie would be back. That night, dressed in black from head to toe, Annie stepped out of her house and made her way to the spot. She hoped the dog wouldn't be there just this once so she could sneak a look, but she was wrong. He was still there, standing firm, protecting the drain like a soldier on duty. As soon as she stepped closer, he growled and barked, loud and ferocious. She turned and ran, not wanting to draw attention. Now she was more confused than ever. What was keeping this dog tethered to the spot, refusing to leave even for a moment? Whatever it was, it mattered, and if she wanted to uncover the truth, she needed to change her approach. The only way forward was trust, so she began the very next day. She gave him a name, Ninja, for his beautiful, glossy black coat and the quiet strength he radiated. After work, she returned to the store and bought him treats. As usual, he ate a few and dropped the rest down the drain. She said nothing. She simply watched. Every day, she came back with more treats. Every day, she said his name gently, Ninja. She made sure he heard it over and over again. Within a week, the shift was undeniable. Ninja began to wait for her. His eyes lit up when he saw her coming. His tail wagged, and he started to approach her without fear. Eventually, he let her pet him. He leaned into her hand, trusting, open. It was beautiful. Slowly, he even began to let her come closer to the drain. And then, finally, the moment arrived. Annie stood right over it. Heart pounding, she knelt and looked in. But all she saw was darkness. No movement, no light, nothing visible at all. Still, she didn't give up. She was closer than ever. Annie dropped to her knees, eyes locked on the drain. She didn't care about the stares from passers-by. She wasn't thinking about what people might say. Her focus was razor-sharp. What was in that drain? But even now, she saw nothing. Frustration crept in. She leaned in closer, just inches from the metal grate. And that's when she heard it. A sound, faint, almost drowned out by the hum of traffic. She tilted her head, angling her ear closer. There it was again, meowing, tiny, weak, fragile, kitten. Her heart skipped a beat. Without wasting a second, she pulled out her phone and called the fire department, her voice urgent as she explained everything. To her relief, they arrived quickly. She pointed them to the drain, eyes wide with hope. The firefighters pried open the grate. One of them crouched and shone a flashlight into the darkness below. He looked up and gave a sharp nod. There's something down there. Then he climbed in. One by one, the rescuer began lifting tiny, trembling kittens out of the depths. First one, then another, then another. Annie gasped. The count kept rising. 6 kittens, 6. She stood there, stunned, as the pile of soft, helpless creatures grew before her. No one had known they were trapped down there. Not until now. The firefighters guessed that the kittens had been swept into the storm drain during heavy rainfall and hadn't been able to find their way out. And that's when Annie turned to Ninja. The black German shepherd sat calmly nearby, tail now wagging in joy. And Annie understood. He had known. Ninja had found the kittens. He'd stood watch over them, guarded them, shared his food with them, protected them. And because he didn't trust anyone else to help, he stayed. That's why he hadn't left. That's why he barked when she got too close. He wasn't being aggressive, he was being brave. Now that they were safe, he couldn't stop wagging his tail. He jumped around happily, even trying to lick Annie's feet in excitement. She led him over to the spot where the kittens had been placed. Some were weak and sick, and they were already being prepared for immediate transport to the nearest veterinary clinic. People gathered. Photos were taken. Phones flashed. Everyone was amazed at what Ninja had done. He had saved lives. Had it not been for him, those kittens might never have been found. Annie, full of admiration and affection, knew exactly what she needed to do next. She brought him home. Ninja didn't resist. In fact, he walked beside her eagerly, tail still wagging like a drumbeat of happiness. It was the first time Annie had brought a dog into her home since Comfort's death. Part of her was afraid it might hurt again, but it didn't. Ninja loved the place instantly. He jumped and ran through the rooms, sniffing every corner. Annie laughed. A full, genuine laugh, for the first time in ages. He reminded her so much of Comfort. The way he made the house feel alive again. Over the next few weeks, the two were inseparable. They played together, ate together, even slept side by side. A new chapter had begun, and it was beautiful. Annie's heart felt full. She knew she was ready. She adopted him officially, signed the papers, made it real. Ninja wasn't going anywhere. Meanwhile, all 6 kittens found loving homes. Families stepped up to care for them, each touched by the story of the heroic dog who had watched over them. Online, the story exploded. Photos of Ninja and the rescued kittens went viral. People everywhere were talking about him, about the unlikely hero who had done something truly extraordinary. Annie was proud, so proud. Did this story touch your heart? What would you have done in Annie's place? Have you ever rescued a dog or been rescued by one? We'd love to hear your story in the comments below. If the story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Remember, life can be tough and loss can knock us down. But if we hold on, stay open, and keep our hearts kind, we can always find happiness again. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Take care and have a beautiful day.